Hello, everyone. This is Elsa W. Smith, your Maryland estate planning attorney here. Welcome to Women Winning Wednesdays. I'm really glad that you're joining me today. We're actually going to talk about a really important topic today. Women Winning Wednesdays, as you guys know who follow me, it's a platform that I created to feature guests and educational content to show you glimpses of what an empowered woman looks like and the tools that she needs to win. Just a bit of housekeeping. Since we're streaming on StreamYard, make sure to give StreamYard permission for us to view your comments. You can do that by going to streamyard.com/Facebook. Say hi, let us know where you're hearing from. And by the way, if you're catching this on the replay, make sure and put hashtag replay in the comments. I've been really wanting to delve into this, what can be a bit of a contentious topic. The topic today is, should your kids receive the same inheritance? You know, what's the right answer? And I'm going to fall back to the tried and true attorney response. It depends. First of all, I want to unpack the first word of my question topic, should. You know, Webster's dictionary tells us that should is used to express expectations of, obligation and propriety. So whether we want to accept it or not, every society has expectations about how its members should and should not behave. So in evaluating today's question topic, we are juxtaposing societal standards of obligation and propriety against the reality of our lives and our family dynamics. Now, has the reality of what you're dealing with ever differ with what is considered proper by society? Have you ever made a decision based on what society says that you're obligated to do? Or are you the type that is not afraid to go against societal standards? You know, most of my clients who have children do plan on leaving an inheritance to them. But I advise them that an estate plan like you will change over time. An estate plan, is a reflection of where you are spiritually and financially at any point in time. At least that's my belief. Your estate plan also reflects the nature of the relationships that you have with family, the nature of your relationships with your children. And if we're being honest, the health and strength of those relationships can and do change. Now, it's against this backdrop that we're going to look at whether your kids should receive the same amount of your inheritance. First thing we're going to talk about is when you're considering an equal inheritance. Dividing your inheritance equally among your children means that everyone is going to receive the same amount. So if you have 2 children, they will each get 50%. If you have 5 children, they will each receive 20%. An equal inheritance is a good idea for your family if all of your children are similarly situated in life. So for example, they all have similar incomes. If they're all responsible with money, if they all received roughly the same levels of support from you as parents, whether it was paying for college or grad school, paying for a wedding, contributing to a down payment on a deposit for their first home, or things of that nature. So in that case, then splitting an inheritance equally seems like an easy decision, right? So if your estate assets, I should say, include both money and tangible assets like a home, a car, art, jewelry. In order to divide these evenly, you're going to have to determine the dollar value of each tangible item. Then you need to decide which child should inherit each item and compensate the other children for the difference in those dollar amounts. So, for example, if you leave your oldest child your home, you might consider giving your other children a higher percentage of financial assets to make up the difference if there's some inequality there. I want to share a very creative solution, and I have to give credit to one of my former clients for this, as to how she distributed assets in her home to her three adult children. She invited them to what she called like a Saturday family day. And she gave each child a Post-it note with a particular color assigned to it. And the children were to go around the house and tag specific items in the home that they wanted. Now, if there was a dispute or two children wanted the same item, it was up to them to negotiate amongst themselves, what they were going to do. They had to figure it out on that day. So it was, I love that because it was very creative, and it was a way of bringing family together and really resolving what can be contentious at times in a very fun, family-friendly way. And I wanted to share that with you all. If your intent is to give equal sums to each child, you need to take taxes into account. And I'm sure my accountant friends who are watching will agree with me and go, here, here. If your children are taxed at different income tax rates, this means that the amounts that they inherit after taxes will be unequal. Consulting with a tax advisor in conjunction with working with your estate planning attorney is crucial to ensure that Uncle Sam does not thwart your plans to evenly divide your estate among your children. Now, here's some things to consider. Decide how much each beneficiary should receive. Do you want each of your beneficiaries to receive the same amount before or after taxes? If one child receives more than the others from a pre or post-tax perspective, will that create friction among your children? Make tax-smart allocations. Remember, in order to maintain a tax-efficient distribution, your beneficiary allocations may need to adjust over time as your beneficiary's tax rate changes. And then explain inequalities. Before you pass, be clear with your children about your inheritance plan. If one child is going to receive more or less than their siblings, make sure to explain the rationale while you're still alive. If your plan isn't made clear, it can open the door for conflict among your kids in the future. Now, this is a good opportunity for you to meet with an estate planning attorney to discuss creating a trust, perhaps, and choosing the right type of trust that will allow you to minimize the tax liability to your children. A trust allows you to pass assets to beneficiaries after your death without having to go through probate. Trusts are similar to wills, but trusts generally avoid state probate requirements and the associated expenses. Now, it's time to deal with what I call the elephant in the room. Giving equal inheritances to avoid sibling rivalry and conflict. As I've said on other videos, making estate planning decisions out of a space of guilt or fear is not healthy. In the privacy of your mind and heart, you may not want to leave equal inheritances because you don't think each child deserves it. There, I said it. But because of what society says we should do, there's that word again. We ignore our actual family dynamics because it feels easier to do what is expected and accepted. You may fear that if you don't leave equal inheritance amounts, the child receiving less may file a lawsuit to challenge your will. Lawsuits can be emotionally and financially draining, not to mention a situation you don't want your children to have to deal with. There are a few ways to mitigate the risk of a will challenge and ensure your final wishes will be honored. One, don't involve your children directly in the drafting of your will, to avoid claims of undue influence. And we're going to touch on this again later on in today's show. Consider a no contest clause in your will. And also use a trust to provide guidance and structure for any children who might not be financially responsible. One of the best ways to avoid future lawsuits and will challenges is just to talk to your children, discuss your estate plan. You know your family better than an estate planning attorney. So talk to them about who's inheriting what and who's not, and your reasoning for it. Again, we'll touch on this again in a few minutes. So now I want to talk to you about unequal inheritances. So what if you're considering leaving different amounts to children because they are not similarly situated? What do I mean? Consider, what if you have a special needs child who cannot live independently and will need support for the remainder of their life? In this case, by the way, a special needs trust may be a tool that you should consider and work with an estate planning attorney to craft one that's going to protect the interest of that child. What if you paid for one child to attend college and grad school, which, by the way, speaking from personal experience, can be hundreds of thousands of dollars, while your other children chose different careers that didn't come with such a hefty price tag? What if one of your children serves as your caregiver and you want to reward them for their financial and personal sacrifices? What if one of your children married into a very wealthy family and wants for nothing? What if you're a blended family and your stepchildren also stand to inherit from their other biological parent? Now, these are just a few examples of why you may consider leaving unequal inheritance amounts to your children. The last question about stepchildren leads me to my next point. Did you know that parents have become increasingly likely to divide their estates unequally? I want to share some interesting information I found in preparing for today's show. In a paper titled Unequal Bequests, and it was published by the National Bureau of Economic Research, the authors of that paper analyzed a survey, a nationally representative sample of parents in a health and retirement study that went from 1995 to 2010. Now, the survey reached out to more than 26,000 Americans, interviewing them every 2 years. Of the more than 26,000 folks that participated in the survey, a little over 21,000 had more than one child, and a little over 5,000 had both genetic or biological children, as well as stepchildren. And among the parents who were 50 years of age or older and who reported having wills, the fraction treating their children unequally went up. It rose from 16% to 35% during that 1995 to 2010 window. Parents with stepchildren were about 30 percentage points more likely to be planning unequal bequests than those with genetic or biological children only. Now, according to the study, the overall trend away from equal inheritances appears to be driven in part by the increasing prevalence of parents with stepchildren. Again, just something to consider. In case you're wondering where I got the questions I raised earlier, they came from conversations with my clients. They are all valid considerations. Why? Because they are unique to your experience. And that may not look like the experience of your neighbor down the street or of a relative, and that's okay. Let's talk for a minute about the risks associated with leaving unequal inheritances to your children. If you decide to leave unequal inheritances, understand that you could put your plans and your children at risk of going through a lawsuit. You know your children better than your estate planning attorney, as I said. It is important to understand how you can mitigate or lessen the risk of a lawsuit by the quote unquote less favored child. The first step is to draft your will with the assistance of an estate planning attorney while you're of sound mind and without undue influence from one of your children. What do I mean? Undue influence means that one of your other children believes, or at least thinks it can be proven in court, that you were somehow manipulated during the process of creating your will. As a result, that child would argue to a court that you express wishes that you otherwise wouldn't have, that weren't really what you wanted. Let's also talk about lack of capacity. That's another way that a will can be challenged. That means that you didn't understand what you were doing when you created your will, perhaps because of age or because of a physical or mental illness had eroded your ability to make sound decisions. A child could also try to argue that your will isn't valid because of fraud or because, say, your signature wasn't witnessed properly. Other ways to avoid challenges to your will include creating a trust to provide structure for a child who might not be able to manage an inheritance responsibly. And as I mentioned before, excluding children from the will writing process to invalidate claims of undue influence. And then lastly, talk to them. Discuss your will with each child to avoid surprises and explain your reasoning. Again, these are suggestions only. Children can file suit to contest a will, but with careful estate planning, you can help mitigate or lessen the challenges to your will. Remember, the most important thing is that when you're dividing up an inheritance, is that it's your money and you have the right to do with it what you choose. Your will and the rest of your estate plan should reflect your dreams and the legacy that you want to leave. Working with an experienced estate planner can help you navigate the uncomfortable but real family issues that you're going to encounter along the way. And as your family needs change, so should your estate plan. I'm curious if any of you watching have ever had to deal with some of the issues that I mentioned early on in today's show. Do you have, a child with special needs, and it's one of several children that you have? Have you contributed to one child for various reasons, more than you have your other children by comparison? Again, these are all valid concerns. To review, we discussed today the question of should your kids each receive the same inheritance. You can leave an equal, unequal, or even no inheritance at all. It has been my experience that most parents want to leave at least some inheritance to their children. We talked about things you should consider when you want to split an inheritance equally and valid reasons for leaving an unequal inheritance. We also talked about the risks to your estate and to family harmony by choosing the latter, and we also talked about how to mitigate those risks. I really hope that today's Women Winning Wednesday has shown you that if you've grappled with how to divide inheritance amounts among your kids, that you're not alone. At the start of the show, I said that there's no one correct answer to this dilemma, that it depends. The right answer is the one that works for you and your unique family situation. And as we wrap up, I want to offer you some free resources that'll help you get past some of the obstacles preventing you from creating an estate plan to protect yourself and your family. I want you to visit my website at elsawsmithlaw.com and go to the resources tab. And there you'll find free guides to get you started on your estate planning journey. They're all free of charge, and it's part of our commitment to bring you value. I want to thank you for joining me today on this episode of Women Winning Wednesdays. If you need assistance with estate planning matters, I want you to give our office a call at 410-995-7719. Go to our website, again, elsawsmithlaw.com. Visit our YouTube channel, subscribe, and become a part of our growing community. Thank you for tuning in to Women Winning Wednesdays. I am Elsa W. Smith, your Maryland estate planning attorney, empowering women through estate planning. Thanks so much for joining me, and I will see you next week. Take care.